With Plan B emergency contraception, we're in control of our future. It's backup birth control you take after unprotected sex that helps prevent pregnancy before it starts. It works by temporarily delaying ovulation, and it won't impact your future fertility. Plan B is available in all 50 U.S. states at all major retailers near you, with no ID, prescription, or age requirement needed. Together, we've got this. Follow Plan B on Insta at Plan B One Step to learn more. Use as directed.
Okay, finally got some stupid shit figured out because my autism will kick in and I cannot focus on recording till I get that figured out. What are we, hey you and welcome. Forgot I was doing there for a second. My name is Mac.
Van Haas.
And, folks, as you can hear in the background, you can hear the dulcet tones, you can hear goodbye horses ringing in your ears, and that can mean only one thing. Keith is on the pod.
Hiya.
There you go. Keith, how you doing, buddy? It's been a minute.
Man. It has been a minute, yeah.
I love how we always say it's been a minute when to the listener, the most recent episode was like, you were on a couple of days ago or whatever.
Or if they were like binging, it might be mere seconds ago.
Yeah.
It might be a minute ago.
Well, I like to give it the feel that it's like we're having a long distant friend who I haven't seen in a while. It's coming back. Coming back home.
I feel that's the thing with like the start of these podcasts. Everyone's like, there's a lot of banter at the start, but we genuinely, this is when we catch up each week.
It exactly is. Yeah. I mean, that's how we kind of started, is that we would hang out like every couple of weeks and watch horror movies, and then it became, hey, I have a horror podcast.
Yeah.
Why don't you just come on that?
Yeah, and then we try not to talk during the week.
So exactly.
We can actually talk about stuff on the podcast.
Yeah, because otherwise we would have nothing to talk about on the podcast. So, folks, you are tuning live into two friends catching up.
Yeah.
We should put on the kettle.
What's new, Mike? What's new?
Sweet fuck all.
Sweet FA. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm tired as always.
Classic, yeah.
I'm trying to think what's new. Trying to catch up on horror movies by not watching any of them. I did watch, I watched The Witch, which is a classic. Watched The Northman.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah, that movie rocks. I fucking love that movie.
It is good.
It's so good.
Yeah, much for The Witch, by far.
But, and then I've also been watching this show called Mr. In-Between.
Oh, I love that show. That's a great show.
It's a great show,
I love that show.
Yeah.
It's really good. Australia's coming out with some bangers of like TV shows
what
and
else
movies.
Have they got?
Well, they do a lot of movies.
What else? Name one.
The Bring Her Back.
Oh, Bring Her Back.
Yeah,
Fuck,
that's
you got me there.
Talk to Me. That's
Talk to
Australian.
Me. Yeah. Chopper.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. In Between is great. For the folks at home who don't know it, I highly recommend
Neighbours?
it. It's like a...
No, not Neighbours.
Home and Away.
Home and Away.
Was Neighbours Australian or New Zealand?
Oh, I don't know, actually.
Fuck. But for the folks at home, Mr. In Between is like a dark comedy about this criminal in the Australian underworld. It's very good. It's just like one of those shows that's really well made, really well acted, really well written. It's only 3 seasons. It's not very long.
Yeah, that was the thing. I thought it was going to be longer. I was hoping they'd have like more seasons coming out, but I guess
it's doing that thing where they leave on a high rather than like we've talked about it before. It's like there's so many TV shows that just go on fucking way too. Like The Office. I like the US Office. I actually prefer the US Office to the UK Office.
Me too. Yeah.
And I used to prefer the UK Office.
You did, yeah.
I recently went back and tried to watch the one with David Brent.
Yeah.
I found it kind of unwatchable.
Right.
Quite frankly, like the cringe, it's not funny cringe. Now it's just,
cringe.
This is unpleasant to watch cringe.
Yeah.
So then I watched the US version of The Office and I thought it was really good until like season 5 and then it turns to absolute dog shit.
Michael leaves, is it?
No, it's even before that. It's when the company,
Sabre.
Yeah, their company gets bought or sold or some shit.
Yeah.
The show becomes just absolute fucking dog shit from that point onwards.
Yeah,
It's very, and then Michael leaves and then all these new characters come in. They're all, each one's like more unfunny than the previous one.
Yeah.
And this is beating a dead horse. It becomes a terrible show by the end. Yeah. A lot of shows like that. But Mr. In Between knows when to leave.
Solid, yeah.
solid as a rock. But that's how shows work. I mean, there's so many shows that don't stick the landing.
It's true.
Game of Thrones, perfect example of a show that just fucking biffed it.
I never watched it.
Shit. You didn't watch it?
I didn't see it, no.
Oh, well, it was really good at its highs, and then it was...
That's what I heard, and then I heard
it,
like I said, it turned to dog shit, so I don't...
Yeah, don't waste your time.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be getting into it.
Oh, you know what we haven't talked about? Have you been watching your Blue Jays? Spaceball season is back, baby!
Blue Jays back, man. It's a really... Actually, I need to get a subscription for MLB now, because I'm just like watching the highlights on YouTube.
See, this is what the folks are tuning in for on a horror podcast. Let's get into the spooky stuff we're going to talk about today. Today's story, folks, that's enough shit talking, I think, at the start.
That's about it, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so,
It wasn't interesting.
Yeah, what told me? Okay, yeah,
exactly.
Fill in there.
None of that was interesting. So
I thought it was
skip
interesting.
that.
I liked it.
Well, as we said, this is us actually catching up.
Yeah, it's actually rude. You're listening in, okay?
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is,
exactly.
Eavesdropping,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Get out of here, you nosy little pervert, or I'm gonna slap you silly!
But today's story, I'm really excited to get into because it's one I wanted to cover for a long ass time. I wanted to cover for months and months and months. I do love a good conspiracy theory. We haven't done one in...
And there is plenty in this.
Yeah, this story goes fucking wild as they come.
Yeah.
I'd always heard the name. I'd never done a deep dive like a deep dive we're going to do it today.
Yes.
This is actually going to be part one. This will end up being a two-parter because you can't do it justice in one part.
You could honestly go on, you could do a whole series about it. Like, even when I was reading up about it, I was went down a rabbit hole. Conspiracy leads into another conspiracy. Which leads into another and another. It just goes on and on and on.
That's the whole thing. It's you're in the rabbit hole. You're through the other side.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love it. I'm very excited again today.
It is a great one. And today, folks, it is the Montauk Project, which is very cool. I'm excited to get into it. So how about, Keith, how about you just shut the fuck up and let me get into today's story?
Harsh but fair. Okay, let's do it.
Alrighty then. Known locally as The End for its place at the eastern edge of Long Island, Montauk, New York, it's technically part of the Hamptons, which is sort of known as being a playground to the state's and the country's richest, most famous, and most powerful residents. If anybody's watched Succession, when they go out to their big mansion, that's out in the Hamptons. It's where all the rich people live. Yep. Montauk, it's on Long Island, which is in New York State, but it's much more really like New England.
Yeah, like the tippy.
Yeah, but it's much more like New England. Kind of think of like a small kind of fishing town, all that kind of stuff. I believe Jaws was filmed on Martha's Vineyard, but it's set around Montauk.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. So the more you know. And it also attracts, though, the less well-off, including surfers who are drawn to the area by the often turbulent Atlantic waves. Another thing about Montauk, great brewery there, Montauk Brewery.
Oh, yeah?
They do, hell of a good beer. So that's my input.
I'd say I'd love to try it, but I'll just probably have a Guinness.
Yeah, classic Keith. Other less adrenaline-fueled visitors are tempted in by the fishing, beaches like Ditch Plains, and of course, the famous lighthouse at Montauk Point State Park.
A haunted lighthouse, by the way.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Keith, I was actually going to bite your head off for interrupting me, but how about I do something else with your head? Tell me more.
Okay, so it's a haunted lighthouse, apparently by a ghost named Abigail.
Abigail. Ooh, spooky.
So she was a bride who was part of a shipwreck in 1811. And she was the only survivor. She managed to get up to the lighthouse, but unfortunately, that's where she met her demise.
Damn, what happened?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know, but...
What the fuck? Okay.
She just died.
She just died, okay.
Maybe from sustained injuries, who knows?
All
but
right.
so there's many a tale of people walking up the lighthouse. They feel like a tug on their shirt, or they can hear Abigail through the echoing up the lighthouse. So spooky shit.
Oh, that is cool. I like that. I do love a good old haunted lighthouse. You can't beat it. Now, that lighthouse stretches 110 feet into the sky and dates back to 1796 and proudly includes a museum boasting documents signed by a certain Mr. George Washington. Have you heard of him?
The man himself.
Sure, it's the big fella. And it's the tiny Montauk village that gives the wider area its name and takes in its 6 state parks, of which Montauk Point is just one. There's also Shadmore, which features almost 100 acres of walking trails and stunning views of the Atlantic. Hither Hills, with a renowned ocean-facing campground and picnic areas. Montauk Downs, known for its 18-hole championship golf course. Napeague, which is reserved for wetlands and undisturbed nature. And finally, there's Camp Hero. And it's Camp Hero, folks, that we will be taking a closer go at today. With so much to attract tourists and visitors to the area, the last place you'd expect the majority of them to be lining up to would be to visit an old, run-down, decommissioned army base from WW2. Prior to 1992, you'd have been exactly right. But then, 2 men, a Preston B. Nichols and a Peter Moon, published a book that purported to blow the lid off a set of clandestine experiments, not to mention the subsequent intertwined conspiracies designed to cover them up that revealed a disturbing darkness hidden deep beneath tons of concrete and steel at Camp Hero. Experiments that might have torn a hole in our very reality. Ooh. The Montauk Project.
The Montauk Project. It's an amazing book, but I feel everything we're going to say from now on is just assume it's allegedly.
No,
it's
Keith,
very-
I feel like you're setting the listeners off on the wrong track. It's all true.
Okay.
Believe this shit. It's fucking awesome. It's true. Come on.
Okay.
It is true. You can't prove it's not true.
Trust me, bro. Yeah,
Yeah,
fair
exactly.
enough, yeah.
Well, the book is interesting. I have a hard copy of it here in my library. Maybe eagle-eyed viewers of That Chapter videos might have noticed it's sitting behind me. It is a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
A lot of gibberish.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of
I skimmed those pages.
interesting stuff in the Montauk Project. The book, which came out in 1992, as we said, this part of Montauk, it was known for surfers and rich people and fishermen and all that kind of stuff. Then this book comes out. Every single tinfoil hat wearing motherfucker is making the pilgrimage
It's true. Yeah.
to Camp Hero in Montauk. So firstly, Camp Hero, aka Montauk Air Force Station. Camp Hero stretches out over more than 750 acres. Almost 2/3 of that acreage is home to the former Montauk Air Force Station, formerly occupied by the US Army, who commissioned the base in 1942, in the midst of World War II. The name Camp Hero comes from the surname of General Andrew Hero Jr. What a fucking cool name if you're an Army general.
Yeah, he was born for the army.
Hell yeah, yeah. Who was the Army's commander of coastal artillery, who died the year the base was commissioned. Essentially, he was in charge of the guns, tasked with making sure no one got the chance to, launch a potential invasion from the sea to invade New York. In Camp Hero's earliest days, it would have appeared to have been nothing more than a remote coastal fishing village. On closer inspection, though, the facade would have fallen apart very quickly, hiding behind the specially constructed building fronts that presented themselves as homes and storefronts. In fact, behind them, multiple batteries of heavy guns, ready, loaded, and pointing at the sea in case the Nazis or the Soviets or whoever was going to go get them.
And there was about 600 soldiers living in the area at this time. So they even had a gym, which they disguised to look like a church for some reason.
Maybe it's like they're going, because they would see a lot of people coming and going and wanted them to think it was going to church, not going to gym, where they're getting buff.
Oh,
Well, instead
okay.
they're getting buff with the Lord.
Right, exactly. Work
But
out
they
with the
didn't
Lord.
want to think that they're getting buff with actual buff.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't want to get too bulky.
Right.
I want to stay nice and lean and tight. I want to get that Jesus on the cross look.
So the Big Guns period lasted only a few years, between 1942 and 1945, after a brief spell as a firing range in the early 1950s. With the end of the war and the threat of invasion by sea, disappearing, the site was passed over to the control of the US Air Force, specifically the 773rd Aircraft Control and Warning Squadron in 1952, but it stood inactive for several years. In 1958, the base was repurposed as a radar station and eventually updated to include the massive radar tower at the heart of the base. And, well, folks, that's what they want you to believe, because that's when the decades-long mystery began. That's what I believe. Let's continue with the official story for now.
Okay.
So the job of ANFPS 35 Tower Control Team was as a first line of defense should the Soviet situation suddenly get hot. Fortunately, those alarms were never sounded, so this spell as a radar detection for Soviet aircraft, it lasted throughout the majority of the Cold War years, up until 1974. Then the land began to be divided and transferred to either control of the local civilian or federal authorities, all sort of ending in 1982. The area that made up the base took up its final form then as a state park. Now, that's the setting, folks. That's the scene. So just think old decommissioned army base turned state park.
What do you want you to see?
At the end of a big old Long Island, and it's long, so it's pretty far from. It takes like 6 hours to get from New York to here. It's it's far, but of course they hide in plain sight, folks. You hide in plain sight. Before we get into the Montauk situation, we can't. Keith, stop. I'm going to stop you.
Okay,
we can't talk about it. We have to first talk about the Montauk Project's big brother, the Philadelphia Experiment.
Of course.
Allegedly known to insiders and those involved as the Rainbow Project, or Project Rainbow.
Nice.
Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of this one, my dear listeners. It's sort of in pop culture and was one of those early kind of conspiracy theories that took over the internet back in the day. Probably more of you know more about the Philadelphia Experiment than the Montauk Project, even though the Montauk Project is way more influential. We'll get to it all. But the Philadelphia Experiment is the name given to a series of experiments, if you can believe such a thing, aboard the United States naval ship, the USS Eldridge, a year after the opening of Camp Hero as a coastal defense station in 1943. So the top secret tests the Philadelphia experiment, was attempting to discover a way to make ships invisible or cloaked to radar systems, namely the ones the German U-boats were using to decimate any Allied ships that crossed their paths. At the time, in 1943, around those years, Germany still well in the fight, and without being able to get a steady flow of Marines to Europe aboard ships, the strain on the Air Force and paratroopers was massive. The fear was great, of German torpedoes sinking a US ship full of soldiers, and basically it would, be horrible for the military situation. And then, of course, they wouldn't be able to bring artillery from the US to Europe, so they needed to figure out a way to get past the German U-boats that were patrolling the Atlantic. And so, hence the Philadelphia experiment was born. Now, that's just a little background to try and emphasize the pressure on the folk trying to come up with a solution. Nothing was off the table. According to Preston B. Nichols in his book on the Montauk Project, the man in charge of the search for a solution was a certain thatcher John von Neumann. Neumann was born December 1903 in Hungary, later becoming a prominent part of the team who would work on the Manhattan Project, developing the atomic bomb. Now, Neumann tragically died in 1957, aged just 53, after a battle with cancer. Or did he?
Ooh, or did he is right.
Mm-hmm.
So before von Neumann entered the picture, the Philadelphia experiment was apparently run by none other than Nikola Tesla.
Oh, that fucking bastard.
Yeah.
He's knocking around again?
Yeah.
I didn't actually think he was alive. When did he die?
When did he
I
die?
thought Nikola Tesla died years before that. And didn't he die in the 20s or some shit?
Nikola Tesla died in 1943.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy fuck, this is actually all coming together.
Blowing him, I know.
had no idea.
So
I thought he died years and years before that.
No, so this is really interesting. Yeah, so he apparently ran the Philadelphia experiment initially, and he was allegedly attempting to use Einstein's unfinished unified field theory to achieve radar invisibility. Now here you're asking, what is unified field theory? So at the time, scientists, they knew a couple of big things. One, gravity. So that explains why planets orbit stars, and general relativity, which is Einstein's theory. And then also electromagnetism, which explains electricity, magnetism, light, radio waves, all that good stuff. Now, Einstein thought, basically, what if these are not separate things? Hence the unified field theory. So an easy analogy is, say you see rain, snow, steam, and ice. Now, at first you think they're all different. Then you realize that they're all just water in different forms. So using this theory would let you to manipulate gravity, electromagnetism, and space. So the first phase of the project was simply just to make the ship invisible to radar. Now the second phase was total invisibility. However, not confident in the safety of the experiment, Tesla, he withdrew from the project. That's when John von Neumann, he stepped in, who had no reservations for safety. Interestingly, there was also allegedly another project happening around the same time, which was called the Phoenix Project.
Whoa, that sounds cool.
It is cool. So this was an attempt to control the weather using information and technologies derived from the work of Dr. Wilhelm Reich. He was an Austrian crackpot and a highly controversial scientist. Calling him a scientist that's even probably being pretty generous.
Yeah.
So he was credited with what he called orgone energy.
Oh, if I know anything, I know organs.
Basically what it is, it's sexual energy.
Oh, fuck yeah!
It goes from orgasm energy.
In the room right now,
Yeah.
Damn.
Organs right now. But so he believed this orgone energy, this sexual energy, could cure both cancer and control the weather.
It's like good jizz into the sky.
Think less cumulus clouds and more cumulus clouds.
Yeah, nice.
Reich, he apparently developed a device which could dissipate or deflect thunderstorms, but the government decided to abandon the weather control aspect because they felt that it could lead to lawsuits.
Right, because you've got people busting a nut trying to make it rain.
There we go.
Literally making it rain.
There we go. However, they believed that the energy this device produced could be used to affect people, so they decided to pivot towards population control by altering the emotions of people. No lawsuits there, I guess. So the Phoenix Project, that would later absorb the Philadelphia experiment, which all sat now under John von Neumann.
All right. Okay, well, folks, there you go. That was a brief prehistory of the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
Got some mad shit. You got Nikola Tesla, you got people...
You got Albert Einstein, they're all there.
Having sex in the sky, or I don't know what they're doing, but it's pretty interesting. Now let's get to the Philadelphia experiment itself, which was taking place aboard the USS Eldridge. The Eldridge was a newly commissioned ship docked in Philadelphia, hence the name of the experiments. the Cannon-class destroyer was complete with some unusual modifications, namely several massive generators capable of powering a huge electromagnetic field, sort of like what you were talking about. Tesla was.
That's why he was
He
involved.
was into all those sort of shenanigans. One that would render the ship impervious to detection. Eventually, it came to time to fire up the generators and see what Eldridge's secret weapon was capable of. Witnesses around the shipyard watched as the Eldridge first became engulfed, albeit briefly, by what looked like forks of green lightning. Then, poof, it was gone. The Eldridge disappeared. It wasn't only invisible, it was gone. The question of where to would be answered 10 minutes earlier and 250 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, only to reappear minutes later back in Philadelphia. Time travel is weird. It disappeared and appeared 10 minutes before it disappeared. Time travel, folks. How does it work? So not only had it traveled a massive distance through space, the ship also appeared to travel through time itself. It had. It had transcended time and space. How this had happened, no one had a friggin' clue. After all, the Philadelphia experiment wasn't designed to teleport anything, much less to time travel anything, but that somehow happened.
See, the US Army doesn't make mistakes. Just happy little accidents.
Happy little accidents. That's exactly right. And so you might be thinking, well, hey, they just invented time travel. Go back, kill baby Hitler. Another job well done. But there was a little problem with the plan. No one had any idea how to control where and when the transported object would end up. Very literally. On board the reappeared Eldridge, sailors on board, they'd suffered a variety of serious side effects resulting from the travel. Those effects ranged from burns, similar to those from radiation, all the way to sailors having seemingly been blended into the physical fabric of the ship itself.
Ooh, that's not good.
It was as though they put 2 ice cubes into a freezer, one on top of the other, before turning the freezer off for 10 minutes, then turning it back on. The 2 had temporarily become liquid, but when the conditions returned to normal, they were frozen. Molecules permanently intertwined. People were appearing inside the walls, half inside, half out. A face on the side of the fucking steering wheel of the ship. Mad shit like that.
That's terrifying.
Crew members, they lost their minds, driven insane by the experience of what had happened to them. Worse yet, some crew members seemed to have vanished altogether, forever banished to some unknown place and time, perhaps between dimensions itself.
Where time doesn't even exist. Who knows? The ones that did come back, they were subsequently discharged as mentally unfit after spending a little bit of time in rehabilitation. Now, the status of mentally unfit...
In the 40s?
Yeah, right. But this was pretty convenient to the powers above because it meant that they could easily discredit their stories.
Oh, of course, yeah. And this is the 40s, so they probably would just ice pick lobotomy them.
Yeah, right.
Like, all right, another job well done.
Never hear from him again.
Person. Yeah. So that's what happened with the Philadelphia experiment. Or maybe. One thing we can be sure is that the USS Eldridge was very much a real commissioned naval ship, but it wasn't docked in Philadelphia at the time of the alleged Philadelphia experiment. At least not according to the logs, if you believe the official story. I mean, of course, though. How could you log that?
It wasn't docked in time or space.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they went back in time and changed the fucking logs.
There's no column for that in the logs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the official logs say the Eldridge wasn't in Philadelphia when the experiment occurred, but you can't trust the logs.
No.
You can't trust that at all.
What I found interesting is that, so even though this would have been like a massive breakthrough, like they supposedly just teleported an entire ship, the director of the project, von Neumann, he was then quickly whisked off to work on the Manhattan Project to build the atomic bomb. It's like, teleportation, that's cool and all, but let's put all of our energy into blowing the shit out of people. That's what we really want.
Hell yeah.
And I think this is why this conspiracy theory, it works so well. It's like the Manhattan Project, it was very real and it involved some of the names that get dragged up in these other alleged secret projects. The Philadelphia experiment, it sounds completely mad, sure, but if, say, for example, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, say they never happened and the atom bomb had stayed a secret, like the idea of scientists splitting an atom to build a weapon capable of wiping out a city, that sounds just as unbelievable.
And then using it twice.
Yes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's all conspiracy theories until it becomes conspiracy fact.
Until you're blown up.
Until you're blown up. By the way, speaking of blown up, that movie Oppenheimer, wow, what a piece of shit that movie was. Well, frankly, I thought it sucked. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
You're full of the controversy.
I dragged on Oppenheimer before on this podcast. I think I did at one point.
You should bring it up every episode, I believe.
Feel I should.
Until they change it or get rid of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyways, like any good conspiracy theory, what happened in Philadelphia was based on a grain of truth. The military were very much looking into a way to make their boats invisible, but not to the naked eye. The bigger problem than U-boats were the mines in the Atlantic. At the time, sea mines, they were reliant on magnets that would attract them to a large metal object, like a ship. In order to stop the mines from hitting fishing boats or dinghies rather than their intended targets of warships and freighters, the Germans used the Gauss scale to determine the object's, or target's in this case, magnetic flux density. Basically how attractive to a magnet an object was. The bigger the ship, the more attractive. So you aren't wasting your minds on, small little craft. You only want to use your minds on shit that's worth hitting. So to get around this, ships used a technique called degaussing, or magnetic immunization. This is essentially the same technique that can be used to erase magnetic disk-based drives, and is the process of eliminating or reducing an unwanted magnetic field by generating an opposing field. It's still a method used in today's sort of, warships and stuff like that.
And in Breaking Bad.
And in Breaking Bad, yes, exactly. I always wonder, is that still today? Yeah, magnets. You can wipe a laptop with a strong enough magnet.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you still do that today?
Oh, I don't know, actually.
Fucking magnets, how do they work?
So it's a method still used in today's warships, though in a very different form to when it was first implemented. In the 40s, and for decades after, degaussing a ship was enormously expensive and impractical. Around the time of the purported Philadelphia experiment, the military were looking at ways to advance their levels of evading detection, but it was far more likely to do with very minor advancements in degaussing ships, speeding up schedules and the process itself, rather than to render a ship actually invisible. So that whole, kit and caboodle, that whole scale, it brings us to the question of why is the Philadelphia experiment so important to what allegedly happened in Montauk and the Montauk Project itself? Well, according to some who claim to have been involved with the original Philadelphia experiment, the invisible ship, not the real story of the polarized degaussing bullshit cover story, the real story of a teleporting, time-traveling ship, the experiment, Keith, guess what?
What?
Never ended. It's still going on today. Technically, it is still going on today if you believe in time travel.
Yeah.
However, its aims just changed from wanting to merely cloak ships to trying to harness the accidentally unleashed power of time travel and teleportation. Some of those who'd been involved were completely unaware of their own pasts, their own memories. To return to the hard drive metaphor once again, their memories hadn't been overwritten completely, just compressed and fractured, while new false histories had been inserted onto a new partition. Who knows who could have been involved in the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project?
Right.
You wouldn't know yourself if you'd been involved. They erased your mind.
Yeah.
It would only take the right circumstances for those real memories to be brought back to the forefront and reassembled. For Preston B. Nichols, the author of The Montauk Project, those right circumstances, it was a chance meeting in the woods of Montauk near the site of the former Camp Hero base.
Now, if ever there was a guy to write a book on conspiracies, it's this guy. I don't think he even knows what's true anymore, the amount of bullshit he says. But
I love him,
He's
honestly.
amazing. He's great.
It's like he's literally a guy who grew up obsessed with Star Trek and obsessed with science fiction and obsessed with like these early theories, and then wouldn't you know it, he's also part of a conspiracy theory himself. What are the odds?
That all happened to me.
Yeah.
He has made some extraordinary claims. So he said that aliens cured his cerebral palsy during a abduction at age 17.
Yep.
He said he has an IQ of over 200, which is higher than Einstein's. Pretty questionable academic background. He claims to have a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering, a Master's in physics, and a doctorate in quantum electronics, all of which cannot seem to be proven. He also claims he was a music engineer at one point, but decided to quit the music industry in 1968 because
he was too successful.
Close. It was infiltrated by the mob. Who's seen that coming?
Well, that is actually true.
Now, to give him credit, though, he does seem to have a pretty good understanding of electronics, and he can write a pretty good conspiracy book, of which he has several.
I have an interview with him I want to play at some point on the podcast.
Okay.
We'll get to it later, though. Let's get into his story first.
Now.
So in the early 1970s, beginning in 1971, Preston B. Nichols was employed by a national defense contractor, given in the book as the fictional AIL, Airborne Instruments Laboratory. He worked as an electrical engineer with a side gig, right, get this, investigating a subject he was personally fascinated by, telepathy, mind reading and mind control. Professor X, put your two fingers to your temple, that type shit.
Stop fingering yourself.
Originally setting out to disprove the existence of such powers, things changed, and Nichols worked with a group of self-claimed psychics to try and find a way to prove and then enhance their own telepathic abilities. He actually claimed that he had not only succeeded in the first part, but was having very good results in the second part too. He was proving it and enhancing. He was creating mutants, basically.
Yeah.
X-Men style shit.
He was Dr. X.
Professor X.
Professor X.
Get it right.
I apologize.
So according to Nichols, his breakthrough had been discovering that the fundamentals of telepathy seemed to have a lot in common with how radio waves worked. Radio waves, telepathy, same thing. Essentially, he theorized that telepathy used frequencies which some people were more naturally attuned to. Knowing this may mean you would be able to tune in to those not born with the gift.
Eavesdrop on people's thoughts.
Exactly. And it was while studying and trying to isolate these mind waves in 1974 that Nichols discovered a strange repeating pattern. At the same time, every single day, his subjects at the heart of the experiment would suffer from psychic blackouts for a short duration of time, around 20-ish minutes. Their abilities would suddenly fail them. It was like clockwork. In order to get to the bottom of why this was happening, Nichols used simple radio receivers to scan the airwaves, and soon he found that the blackouts were being caused whenever a signal in the range of 410 to 420 megahertz was being broadcast. Whenever that happened, his subjects and their abilities went bye-bye. His next question was obvious. Where was the signal, which was being broadcast daily, originating from? Nichols used his particular set of skills, building a transceiver out of an old TV antenna and VHS receiver to track down the source of the signal. And I'm sure you can guess where it was coming from. Yep, for Nichols, who lived on Long Island, it was coming from a large red and white colored radar facility on Montauk Point, right at the heart of the Montauk Air Force Base. The transmitter was part of an old SAGE system. There were millions of reasons why the base could be broadcasting the signal, and unfortunately for Nichols, it being an Air Force base and all, he couldn't just waltz in there, ask him what's going on. You're interfering with my psychic experiments. Nichols continued to monitor the signal for a few years, and eventually it disappeared. He expected the source to remain a mystery. That is... Bum bum bum. So that was until 1984 when he suddenly spoke to a friend who mentioned that the base had been long decommissioned, and better yet, the area was now open to the public. He could go in, have a go for himself.
That was a stroke of luck.
Nichols had been studying this phenomena for years now, so there was no way he wasn't, not going to go to investigate the site at the base.
Of course.
As soon as the opportunity arose, Nichols set out to Montauk to try and discover for himself where exactly this signal was coming from, and more importantly, if he could find any indication why a signal was being broadcast at all. Was it automated but long redundant system that just simply hadn't been shut down? Something so unimportant it had been overlooked? Rather than answers, all his visit to the base gave him were more questions. The former military base seemed more abandoned than decommissioned. Interesting.
Yeah.
Spooky.
It is
It was
spooky,
like the
yeah.
military, there was loose papers, mismatched equipment, strewn about the place. Even a random fire extinguisher had been left lying around.
What?
It seemed a fire. I know. Whoa.
You always bring those with you.
Papers, equipment, radar shit, but a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
But Nichols would say, investigating the Air Force Base in Montauk, it seemed like the scientists who had been based here, the technicians, the military people, had fled. They had fled in terror. They hadn't decommissioned, slowly tearing it down, packing shit away in cardboard boxes. No, they had just upped and out. It seemed something strange was happening. And it was just as Nichols was preparing to leave the base and return home to look at his findings when a chance meeting upturned his life and exploded his investigation.
Wow. You couldn't write this stuff.
You couldn't at all. This is great. Hey, folks, it's a good story. Now, I'm leaning towards it being real, but it's a good story. So as Nichols was leaving the Montauk Air Force Base, he met a young man who he knew right away was clearly homeless and living in the grounds of the base. Nichols expected maybe the young man might be about to ask him for some money, maybe even a ride. But what he didn't expect was not only did he have a wild story to tell, but he also seemed to recognize Preston B. Nichols.
Ooh.
Now, this is despite Nichols having, never been here before, or so he believed he had never been here before. This disheveled young man told Nichols that he had been living in one of the outbuildings, but he had previously worked here as a technician with the US military, but had deserted. I love the fact he deserted and then was still living on base. Like, what?
I
deserted to over there.
Yeah.
When Nichols asked what had made him, desert, what had made him, leave the military, the answer wasn't even in the same realm of reality as to what he'd expected. Instead of boredom or regret, none of that made the man flee. It had been fear. Fear of a monster. Not a figurative monster. Not some kind of like, ooh, my morality, the monster of humanity is a monster. No, it was a literal monster.
Ooh.
This monster had broken out somewhere and had rampaged through the base, which still then makes even less sense why he deserted and was still living there.
He decided to stay there, yeah.
I ran away from the monster by running away from one building to another in the same Air Force base.
This is a pretty important character now who provides quite a bit of backstory, one of which we will never hear from again after this.
No, exactly. He somehow gets sideswiped out of the story. Yeah. The incident, though, of a monster escaping had led to the project and then the entire base being shut down afterwards. As he spoke, Nichols thought the man was being vaguely odd, not oddly vague, in the way you might, if you're telling the story to somebody who already knows the details.
Yeah.
So you're sort of just giving them the gist of it.
You were there, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when Nichols tried to get the man to go deeper and explain in detail what he meant by the project, he was stunned to realize that's what the young man had been doing.
Yeah.
He presumed he was telling you what you already knew. It turned out that the young man knew Nichols. Maybe even better than Nichols knew himself. And scarily, he addressed him by name and asked him, "Why don't you remember?" Not only had Nichols been there before many times, he had been one of the men running the Montauk Project.
Oh my days.
Nichols also claimed to have been accompanied on this trip by a psychic named Brian,
Of course.
who performed a reading and corroborated what the homeless man had told Nichols.
Good thing he was there.
Exactly. He was there, in fact, and he was a psychic. So he knew that he was telling the truth, and there was no bullshit happening.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He's a psychic. They don't bullshit. There's one thing I know about psychics.
You can't fool me.
They're trustworthy people.
Yeah, I know.
So between all of them, Nichols and his psychic friend Brian also retrieved several pieces of equipment from the base. So around this point, we need to introduce another character into the Montauk Project story. A little later that year, 1984, when Nichols began working with a man named Duncan Cameron. Now, Duncan Cameron is sort of like the action hero of the story.
Yep.
Think of it as like if Nichols is like the brains and the researcher. Nichols is like the guy who invented the time travel machine. Duncan
He's the
Cameron
guy in the chair.
He's Kyle Reese in
Yes,
Terminator
yeah.
1. He's the
Yes.
guy who does the action.
Yeah.
He goes back in time to protect Sarah Connor and
Yeah.
also have sex with her.
Yeah.
But anyway, this guy, Duncan Cameron, he's Kyle Reese. He's cool.
Okay.
Cameron was a psychic with some of the strongest abilities Nichols had come across to that point. The two had met by chance when Duncan Cameron came to Nichols to have a piece of radio equipment fixed.
Is it really by chance if he's a psychic?
Good point. Damn, nothing's ever by chance. These are tricksy people.
Yeah, right.
Eventually, Nichols would take Cameron along with him and his assistant psychic Brian on a visit to the site at Montauk. Once there, both Nichols and Cameron were shocked. They couldn't believe it to find that Cameron felt oddly at home on the base as well.
What?
Much like Nichols. What are the odds?
I know. That's crazy.
Oh, jeez, who doesn't? Who isn't part of the Montauk Project at this point? Brian must have felt so left out.
I know.
Not only that, but he appeared to know the layout of the base in detail, where everything was, and strangely, where things had previously been.
Oh.
There's just empty spots. He's pointing. That's just hilarious to me.
The
Just
fire
pointing at
extinguisher.
empty
It's
space.
still there.
That's my favorite fire extinguisher. As the two men toured the base, Duncan could tell Nichols exactly where certain rooms and facilities were. Then they entered a building that once housed a transmitter, and Cameron appeared to go into some sort of fugue state or trance. Something in his head, had shaken loose. Suddenly he was aware of having a whole other agenda behind his and Nichols coming together. Duncan Cameron was able to describe undergoing mind programming sessions in which he had been instructed to kill, and the intended victim was none other than the man standing beside him, Preston Nichols.
No.
He had been MK Ultra'd to kill the man he had just met, who he was here in Montauk with.
Yeah, wow.
This programming had been buried deep in Cameron's subconscious mind, and had he remained unaware of it, if he hadn't gone to Montauk, where for some reason it shook loose, he believed he would have gone through with the mission he'd been subconsciously acting on. He hadn't gone to Nichols to get some radio shit fixed. He'd gone there probably to kill him.
Right, yeah. Ooh,
this is mad. Fortunately for Cameron, though, and even more fortunately for Preston Nichols, by Cameron inadvertently becoming aware of his repressed instructions, he'd overcome their sway on his physical actions. So, becoming aware of repressed shit gives you control over it.
Yeah. I nearly killed you, but I didn't. Say thank you.
You're welcome.
I can say that to anyone.
Let me just saying this shit. Oh, I was supposed to kill you.
Nearly killed you, but I didn't. You're welcome.
In addition to his primary mission failure, there was worse news yet for the ones who had sent Cameron, some shady government group. See, Cameron, he had a secondary objective too, to destroy Nichols' lab and all documents relating to his research into the Montauk Project. After the visit to the base, Nichols and Cameron returned to Nichols' lab, the very same premises Cameron was supposed to destroy. They returned there so that Nichols could begin the process of completely deprogramming his would-be murderer. Now, the exact process he might have used will become very important to this story shortly. Now, Cameron, he soon began to recall more pieces of what he realized was his own time on the base at Montauk on Camp Hero. He had even begun rebuilding memories of having taken part in the project himself, and his involvement as a subject of experiments with telepathy and teleportation. This wasn't some vague thought experiment either. It was real, and more shocking, it had been successful.
They did it.
They'd figured it out. The memories came back piece by piece. At first, they seemed to make very little sense, but with a little patience and tenacity, Nichols and Cameron were able to begin putting that jigsaw together.
The montage.
The
montage.
Yeah, exactly. Push it to the limit. The first major piece had been Cameron recalling his time serving in the US Navy, where he had served on the same ship alongside his brother, Edward Cameron. But, folks, you're gonna shit yourselves.
Okay.
What ship had they served on? The USS Eldridge. Yes, they had served. Duncan remembered. He began to get these memories back of himself and his brother serving on the ship from the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh my day. Full circle.
Back in 1943, almost 40 years before Cameron and Nichols had even met, the Philadelphia experiment occurred before Cameron was born. How could he remember being a part of an experiment he wasn't born for?
Oh my day.
Conspiracy or conspirafact. Shit is getting wild, folks. And this is all true, too.
That's the crazy part.
There's a book about it. Nothing fake is ever in a book, obviously. So ever since their first visit to Montauk and the meeting with the homeless man, who never comes up again, Preston Nichols felt like his life had been falling apart, like he was going insane. It started with small occurrences that Nichols couldn't even, recall the beginning of. They were so innocuous. Like, the things that started happening were mail sent to his address, seemingly by mistake, but over and over and over again, people would mention a Project Moonbeam.
Walking into a room, couldn't remember why he was there, couldn't find his keys. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Would drink a lot of beer and whiskey and not remember what happened.
Another blackout.
Whoa, what's going on here? People he didn't recognize would address him by name and in a friendly way. These things, they seemed to be happening for months, but he just hadn't realized it was anything significant. Looking back, though, he realized it was all the start of a huge unraveling of a deep conspiracy. Nichols spent months investigating Montauk, even camping out on a beach nearby and interviewing locals, including the town sheriff.
He said in the book that he camped on the beach and then he went to local bars to ask the locals if they had any wild stories.
Hey, folks! Yeah.
He was just on the piss for like a couple of weeks.
I love that, yeah. He literally just went there and prayed to shut up chicks and just get drunk. Then, out of the blue, Nichols was stunned one day when a man he didn't recognize, but who definitely knew him, suddenly barged into his lab and began ranting about Montauk and the project there. Then came the straw that broke the camel's back, and it came in the most unexpected way. A mysterious cut on Nichols' own hand that he noticed at work. Not only did Nichols not recall having cut his hand, but the wound had been treated, something else he had no memory of. With his previously unshakable grip on reality well and truly shaken, Nichols began his best to try and dig into his own subconsciousness for answers. Then, one day, Shortly after arriving at work, Nichols was overcome by a sudden urge, one that made no sense at the time. See, everyone knew that the most secure secrets of his employer, who were, again, he calls them AIL, but he says that's a pseudonym. It's not their real name. Their most secure secrets were kept in secure rooms that were guarded around the clock. In 1989, after years and years of digging into the inner workings of the mysterious Montauk Project, Nichols began to realize that there was a connection between himself, his employer, AIL, a military contractor, and the Montauk Project. Further, whenever he strayed close to the guarded parts of the AIL building, he would feel a hit, a churn in his stomach. He would get the heebie-jeebies.
Maybe he needs some Imodium.
Something felt off. He was reliably informed that few people, less than 10, in the whole company had access to those parts of the buildings, and found out himself that paying too much attention to those secure and classified parts of the building invited a visit from the company's security team, but he received a visit himself. But then, one day, Nichols had a gut feeling, not an Imodium one either. This one led him to the AIL building in Melville, New York. Now, that was a separate building from where he worked, and he knew that Melville had a top secret level down in the basement. But he also had a hunch that he would be absolutely fine strolling on in, and that's what he did. He walked in like he owned the place.
Confidence.
Oh yeah, you can get through airport security, my friend, by just acting like you belong.
Easy. Yeah.
Walk confident, eyes forward. Sure, the guards, they're too scared.
You're either going to walk through or get shot. I mean, it's a 50-50.
Hey, that's worth it if I've ever heard
I like
of it.
those odds.
That's exactly what Nichols did. He walked in, he handed over his security pass. They were like, yep, in you go, sir. Nichols had found himself in the belly of the building and was experiencing what Cameron had felt back at the Montauk base. Guided by his subconsciousness, Nichols walked along corridors until he came to a certain office. His own office! What? On the desk was a plaque with his name on it, and underneath his name was the title Assistant Project Manager.
Oh my God, he got promoted, didn't even know.
What project? Project Moonbeam, Keith.
Ooh.
That was just one of the million questions that Nichols faced. And it would take years, well into the early 90s, for him to piece together the foundations of his own personal mystery. Nichols had completely, unknowingly, been living two completely separate lives. Severance. That's literally where Severance came from. If any of you guys have seen TV show, it's a great TV show. But he had a work life that involved military conspiracies and telepathy and time travel, and then his own life where he was tinkering away with friggin' radios and shit.
Yeah.
Wild. And things only got weirder from there. Which we will get to in part 2 next week, folks. Tune in then when we're going to get into the deep and tasty bowels of the Montauk Project. I'm talking time travel. I'm talking end of the world scenarios. I'm talking monsters. I'm talking telepathy. All the good shenanigans.
Maybe a little sprinkle of aliens?
Ooh, yes, we do aliens. Yeah. Oh, I will play that clip in the next episode, the one I have ready.
Okay.
It's a hilarious clip of Preston being Nichols.
Yeah.
Preston Nichols being interviewed about his experience with reptilians.
Amazing.
It is awesome. So, folks, stay tuned and tune in next week. But until then, please take care of each other and yourselves. Because guess what?
I'll see you.
Yeah, I know. But there you go. All right. Bye, guys. You've been great. Thank you. Not big. Not big. Not big. I don't know how you pronounce that. Not big. I'll just do it. If you're ever unsure how to pronounce something, just do it in an Italian accent. Not big.
Think Verizon is expensive? Think again. Anyone can bring their AT&T or T-Mobile bill to a Verizon store today and we'll give you a better deal. So bring us your bill. Walk in, run in, pogo stick in, teleport if you can. Ride on the back of a rollerblading yak or fly in on the wings of a majestic falcon. Any way you can, bring your AT&T or T-Mobile bill to a Verizon store today and we'll give you a better deal on the best network. Based on RootMetrics Best Overall Mobile Network Performance, U.S. second half 2025. All rights reserved. Must provide very recent postpaid consumer mobile bill in the name of the person redeeming the deal. Additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.